Hey there, my friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the writing doctor, and today I want to talk about area, length times width, or length times width. A lot of times when students see a problem where the dimensions on a rectangle or square have the same keyword, they're so used to adding or subtracting when the keywords are the same, which happens a lot, that they'll make a mistake when it comes to questions revolving around the area of the square, not just its perimeter. So practice teaching your students to be careful when they're looking at squares. Check the question for a hint or a clue to make sure that the question is asking about area, length times width, or perimeter, add up all sides. The question that we're going to look at today, and the reason I'm doing this one and a couple others in math with you today, is that I'm getting ready to do a math training with two schools, like a math camp next Saturday with third, fourth, and fifth graders at a school here in the Valley and Rio Grande Valley. For those of you that are not familiar, I don't know why they call us a valley, because I don't see any mountains nearby. I guess the valley is in the lowest part of Texas. Who knows? But what I do is I take the most difficult questions from every year's test and I make a math surgery using the 10 to 15 most difficult questions, making a similar question with the similar essential knowledge and skill, the content area, and just make it just as challenging, but with a completely different problem. So before I add my own and do my math surgery, and for those of you who teach third and fourth grade, I've already done this for you guys. I've done it for everybody from the 2019 test from third grade all the way to eighth grade. So if you're watching this video, please message me and I can send you a link to my math surgery, because we're getting down to the nitty gritty. It's already the middle of March and you're going to be taking your test at the beginning of May in math in third through eighth grade, and then of course algebra. So let's take a look at the problem that was open-ended that caused your students so many problems. And I can almost guarantee that every single time that your math problem is in an open-ended world versus a multiple choice world, your students are going to struggle more with those because they don't have a target to look at the end. They just have to assume that they applied the correct strategy, and then when they place it into the grid, they're going to hope to the Lord in heaven that they were able to get their answer correct, and that's not always the case. So I'm going to show you, number one, how to do this problem in the correct order, because it's basically a three-step problem because of the way it's set up. And so more than likely your students only did one step or two steps, or because they saw that all the key words feet were the same, they just went ahead and added up, and they were probably giving the perimeter of the object being discussed instead of the area. So let's check it out. It only got 25% correct in Texas. Let me share my screen and I'll make sure that I enlarge it and enlarge myself there in the corner so you can see me doing the visual verbal auditory kinesthetic thing. So this question was a 5th grade question in Texas. So if you teach anywhere across the United States and your students are being asked about area, then this applies to you. So when I say mind your P's and Q's, the P is the problem that has periods, and the Q is the question that has a question mark. And so the skill is always going to be based on the question, because problems can give you a lot of information. Life can give you a lot of problems, but you're going to have to learn how to navigate through all of the information in the problem to make sure that you're truly answering the question. And as you can see, because it was a grid response, many students in Texas struggle with it. So if your kids are reading that question, what is the area? Their brain, because hopefully they're seeing it, saying area, hopefully their brain will immediately think, oh, area, length times width, or area, count the squares. Well, in this case, we can't just count squares because they're not shaded. And so whenever they're looking at shaded versus unshaded, yes, you can count how many squares and you'll find out the amount of squares, the length times the width that there is based on how many are shaded or unshaded. So what is the area in square feet? So square feet or feet squared, same thing, of the deck that Edgar built. Okay, so I'm going to guess that this rectangle and this square are the deck, but we should probably check now the problem. Edgar built a deck in his backyard. There's my backyard, this whole area, and there's the deck apparently, with a section of the shape of a rectangle. Think of that as the first part of the problem, and a section in the shape of a square. So once you figure out the area of the rectangle, then figure out the area of the square. And when you see the word and, you can substitute a little d in there. You can add those two shapes together and you'll get the total area. So that's why I'm saying it's a 3-step problem. Area, length times width, 16 times 8 is the area of the rectangle, 128 square feet. 8 times 8 is the area of the square, 64 square feet. So when you take 128 square feet and add the area of the square, you get 8 and 4, 12. 6 and 2 is 8 plus the 1 that you carry, 9, 192. And so that your kids know, there's at the end of every whole number, there's a decimal. So you might want to always teach them to say 192, and I'm bouncing an imaginary ball on the floor because the decimal's down there below. Nothing else, okay? No tenths, no fractions, nothing. So the answer was 192. And if you take a look at my mathematics chart that those of you who have purchased, if you go to the keywords operations page, there's 4 pages on there, and you see, oh, there's a bunch of areas. What am I looking for? Oh, there it is. Squares and rectangles. Length times width in square units, because squares are for 2-dimensional and cubes are for 3-dimensional. There's a couple other, there's an area of a triangle because that's different. Half base height is for triangle, but for squares and rectangles, area is length times width. So when you open up the mathematics chart, it's got the place value from ones with the little tiny square, the lines for tens, and the little box for hundreds, all the way over to the 100 billions. So since the answer was 192, your students would have had to place a 1 in the hundreds place, 9 in the tens place for 90, because 9 times 10 is 90, and a 2 in the ones place, 192. And they don't have to do anything else. If they want to, they could put 192 and 0.0, or they could put the 0 here if they want to. They could even put another one if their grid happens to have that. But as long as they have the 192 and on the grid, then they're going to be okay. Remember that the key words, because we have to know what we're talking about, square feet or feet squared would be how you'd say that in words. Okay, so there's a big difference, everyone, between perimeter, add up all sides, and area, length times width. So on that question, I'm just gonna tell it to you. If it's perimeter, it would, the perimeter of the entire thing, the, what would they call that, the deck, would be 16 plus 16 plus 8 plus 8 plus the 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, because perimeter is add up all the sides. So the entire perimeter, and it would be a little bit different because the two shapes are connected together. So you would have to subtract the 8 from the square. Let me show it to you so I'm not confusing you. Just kind of extra information here. If I was just doing the perimeter, it's always the distance around the outside. And since this little 8 is on the inside, then it would be 16 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, 8, 8, and plus this one here. And so since we already know that 16 is the total, and if you take away 8, then you would get 4 here and 4 here to make up for the other 8. So the perimeter would be the 16 plus 8 plus 8 plus 4 plus 4 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, the distance around the outside. So it's possible your students might have done that, but remember to have them do what they see and say somehow to make math more kinesthetic. And that's what I call taking a worksheet and making it into a sheet that works, that comes to life with my mouth and my hands and my body reaction. So hopefully, if you teach 5th grade or you're teaching, that question was also asked in other grade levels. I can't remember if it was 3rd or 4th. They also did pretty poorly on the area. And we got to be careful that just because the keywords are the same, we don't always just become adaholics and add up the numbers. Area is always going to be length times width if it's regular rectangles or squares. So, or half of the base times the height if we're talking about the triangles. So tag me in the comment section below. I'm going to have the 5th grade math surgery ready soon. I'm working on that one for, I've already got it ready for the most difficult questions from the 2019 test. Feel free to message me or write in the comments below if you teach fifth grade, or if you teach fourth or third. I already have those ready, and I can message you a link to the third and fourth grade math surgery. So hopefully this was helpful. My next video is going to be on 2 problems on consecutive pages where your fifth graders had to understand the order of PEMDAS. So let me show you, I'll give you a sneak preview using that advanced mathematics chart that you just saw. If your students do not know the order of priority when it comes to PEMDAS, parentheses and exponents, if you look down there for working with integers, red light, 911 priority, MD, not the doctor, but multiplication and division, and then AS, addition and subtraction. These 2 questions that we're going to go over in our next video, you want to wait about an hour or so, I'll have it posted for you fifth grade teachers, and for the schools that I'm coming to. I'm only sharing this from the test because if only 25% of the kids got this question correct in a whole state of 350,000 fifth graders, then I can imagine across the United States it wouldn't have done very well either. So I highly suggest that regardless of what state you're from, practice the math surgeries that I have. I've been doing that since I think 2016 for pretty much all the grade levels that have asked me for trainings, so that we're not practicing things that students are already good at. We're actually practicing skills like we need to know the area of something, how much square feet do I have to work with on something that I'm going to be using. Like I would use a deck like that maybe for a pond or a lake or on top of a river. I would need to know how many square feet of plywood I need to buy so that I can make sure that I have enough to cover the uh, deck that I would want to put so that I could go fishing on a little pier that we could make, fishing at night or fishing during the day with the cool lights and everything. So share this or tag your math teacher friends, because 25% means that it's a 911 problem, that kids really struggle with it. There were 3 steps and they were not as hard as the students made them. So look forward to seeing you in the next one regarding PEMDAS, the order of operations, which seem to give kids a big problem in other grades as well. So I suggest you watch that regardless of what grade level that you teach.